Hello everybody, and welcome to Yoshi1 Kenobi's Discontinuity Self-Mill deck for MTG Arena Standard. Now in this deck, we try to play the following two cards. Drowned Secrets, a card that whenever we cast a blue spell, target player mills 2 cards, and we'll want to target ourselves most of the time, to try and thin out our deck so that we can win the game using Thassa's Oracle. When it enters the battlefield, you look at the top X cards, and if X is greater or equal to the number of cards in your library, you win the game. It also has a scrying effect for the early game. And we also want to play Discontinuity. So Discontinuity allows us to end the turn. This is mostly used at the beginning of your opponent's turn to just end your opponent's turn before their draw step. Now this kind of acts like a Nexus of Fate, except that your opponent gets to untap. So if our opponent has instants or abilities that can be used over and over again, our opponent does get some interaction. So it's not quite a Nexus of Fate. Also, it exiles itself when you cast it, so we only get 4 shot of this. But there's some more synergies. You can cast it for 2 mana during your turn, and you can synergize it with Lotus Field. So when Lotus Field enters the battlefield, you have to sacrifice 2 lands, but with the trigger on the stack, if you cast Discontinuity, then the Lotus Field trigger is going to vanish into the void, and you will have a Lotus Field for free, essentially. Well, you'll ramp the 3 mana instead of the 1, but it will cost you the Discontinuity card, and your turn ends immediately, so you can't play anything else. Then there's another synergy in Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, a very powerful card that most people are familiar with at this point. So when it enters the battlefield, you sacrifice it unless it escapes, and when it enters the battlefield or attacks, you gain 3 life, draw a card. So if you have 5 mana, or actually even on 4, you can cast Uro. Uro enters the battlefield, the attack or enters the battlefield triggers. So you gain the life, you draw the card, you put the land on the battlefield, and if that land ramps you with enough mana to cast Discontinuity, you can end the turn before Uro gets sacrificed, keeping your 6/6 with a powerful effect on the battlefield. Furthermore, with Drowned Secrets, since we are milling ourselves, we are very likely to put an Uro in the graveyard, and feed our Uro with lots of cards that we can exile to bring back our Uro into play. So that's kind of the core of the deck. We want to mill ourselves. Uro can come back from the graveyard. So what else? Well, we need some blue spells. We're playing Chemist's Insight to draw more cards and mill ourselves with the Drowned Secrets. If it's a graveyard, you can use the ability, which synergizes with the Drowned Secrets. So now that we have a powerful instant, we will want to play Wilderness Reclamation, because it allows us to double up our mana. In particular, with Discontinuity, we get to cast stuff during our turn, then end our opponent's turn off of the doubled mana from Wilderness Reclamation. I know it's not fair, but that's what this deck is all about, doing unfair, slow things. So for the rest of the deck, we play a 1-of Tail's End. That's a counter spell for legendary spells, but you can also use it to counter Uro's second ability or counter Lotus Field, much like what we can do with Discontinuity, and cheat out some of the value there. We're playing Growth Spiral because it's one of the best cards in Standard, allows us to ramp and do our unfair things faster. Tamiyo, Collector of Tales, allows us to mill ourselves and try to find some of the key interactions that we're looking for. We can also pick up our Thassa's Oracle from the graveyard. Since we're only playing 2 copies, we do need a way to end the game. As for the rest, well, most of the metagame in Best of 1 is going to be against red deck wins, so we need some defense early on. So we're playing 3 Lovestruck Beast, 1 Brazen Borrower, and 3 Aether Gusts for defense. And that is the deck. The lands are pretty much what you'd expect. And this is Discontinuity Self-Mill for Magic Arena Standard. Now let's see some games in action. We are playing Discontinuity Self-Mill in Magic Arena Standard against Zeroister. This looks like a very decent hand. Like most hands that go Growth Spiral into Uro. And we have our Thassa's Oracle, so we are ready to win the game. And our opponent is playing Rakdos Sacrifice, probably. Or Mono Black Sacrifice. Our opponent just really likes cats. We Growth Spiral to ramp. Let's play Tamiyo here. Try to start generating some advantage. And let's find the Drowned Secrets. Well, we hit a Chemister's Insight. Something. Also, we are starting to fuel our Uro. Just going to come in quite handy fairly soon. Our opponent is thinking of murderously riding our Tamiyo. Ooh, Mono Black Sacrifice. Alright.
To the library.
Let's go for Drowned Secrets. And we hit one. Alright. The opponent's not applying any kind of pressure. So let's cast the Drowned Secrets, mill ourselves with Uro. And then get the Uro trigger. Lotus Field. Yeah, I can accept a Lotus Field. Land is a land. Now with the Drowned Seekers in play, we only have 38 more cards to mill. Tamiyo is doing quite a good job at getting us started too. Opponent attacks with the cat. Sacks the cat. Or, oh, cast the Nightmare Shepherd. Our opponent is starting to have something fairly scary here. So let's fetch a Discontinuity.
I think you will find my note helpful.
And start preventing our opponent from playing. Because that's what Magic's all about. And I think we want to Uro. Draw a bit more cards. Draw more cards, play more lands. Almost infinite gas for Uro. I would have liked to draw one of those. Thank you. Nah, don't really need a second Uro. One is plenty. And let's make a bell token. And pass the turn to you. Opponent sacrifices the cat to draw a card. Get a cat token. Drain us for 2. Now that's a scary point where if our opponent plays a Grey Merchant, we will get drained for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Our opponent can kill the Grey Merchant. That's another 7. Plus the 2 Ayara triggers. That brings us to 16. 4 in the air. We die to Grey Merchant. Very happy to see Drag to the Underworld, because that means we'll get to play another turn. It's going to be our Wilderness Reclamation turn. And there are our odds of hitting a Discontinuity off of Tamiyo is pretty high. We get drained. And drain some more. And if we draw Discontinuity off of Tamiyo, that is pretty much going to be the end of the game. I don't think our opponent will get another turn. Although our opponent does get to untap. So it's not like our opponent can't do anything. He gets to untap, gets to sack something with Ayara. Well, first we need the Discontinuity here. Alright, so we hit one. Breakpoints, Wilderness Reclamation. No attacks. Move to end step. Wilderness Reclamation triggers. We have 7 mana in play, which means we have just enough to cast a Chemist's Insight off of the Reclamation, mill ourselves. Then past our opponent's turn. Opponent untaps. And that'll be all for your turn, dear opponent. You gotta flash in some stuff. But we mill ourselves for 2. The turn will end. It's our turn again. I think this is what mills us the fastest. Go for next Discontinuity. We've hit a Chemist's Insight. Let's cast a Chemist's Insight. Mill ourselves. Draw 2. And that is game. So we get to... Let's burrow. Doesn't really matter what it is, as long as it's not a Chemist's Insight or a Discontinuity. Because we have the second Discontinuity in hand. And we will get to win next turn. Draw card. Put the Scryland in play. It doesn't matter. Already have what we want. We resolve the Wilderness Wreck. And it's just like we're playing Nexus of Turn again. Except that we can't go infinite, because Discontinuity exiles itself whenever we cast it. Alright, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4 mana symbols in play. So we get the Thassa's Oracle for game. Mill ourselves. Even if you kill off the Thassa's Oracle on the spot, the trigger will still win. And we win the game off of Thassa's Oracle, using Discontinuity Self-Mill. When we are playing Discontinuity Self-Mill against Srab33 on MTG Arena Standard. Well, this is a fairly good hand. We have Ramp, we have a Reclamation, we have a Chemist's Insight, we can draw into all sorts of stuff here. We'll also have our Thassa's Oracle to end the game. Or to block a Scorch Spitter. Yeah, let's play the Thassa's Oracle. So that we can block. I'll get a Scry 2. That's actually really good. We only get to put one on top. Let's go with the Love-Struck Beast. It's too bad. I kind of wish we could draw both cards. Growth Spiral. I'll decline. The main reason is next turn we get to Lotus Field Discontinuity, which is going to act as a ramp. Let's chump this. Alright, how do we want to do this? I think we want a Lotus Field Discontinuity, which will give us a lot of mana. Yeah, I think that's what we want to do. Lotus Field, with a trigger on the stack, we will end the turn. And now we have 6 mana. If we draw one more, that would enable us to cast Love-Struck Beast and Wilderness Reclamation. If we ever get to that turn, opponent is attacking us for a ton. But and our opponent has Embercleave mana. Because of the Steamkin, doesn't look like they have it. But it matters not, because that's just too much. We need a very specific sequence of cards. We might have a very specific sequence of cards that gets us out of there. Maybe. Although it's not very likely. Two for sure, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We basically need a Brazen Borrower. So first we'll cast the Wilderness Reclamation. Then what do we need on the following turn? On the following turn we need to draw into a Discontinuity. So let's cast the second Thassa's Oracle to try and dig. That is a Scry 4. It's not what we're looking for. Pass the turn, untap the lands, pass to our opponent. Opponent attacks. We will draw. That's a shame. We will draw again. Might as well play the tap. Alright. Your triggers will resolve. We have to chump Anax. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, let's block one of those. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll live at 1. So we're not dead yet. And we have Wilderness Reclamation and Discontinuity. Can we go old style Nexus of turns? That is the question. Well, I think we need to draw into a Tameo first. So let's start with... Actually, an arrow would be fairly good too. So let's go drone secrets first. Then we chemisters insight. Mill ourselves. Draw 2. Sure. Cast a Love Strike Beast token. No attacks. At the start of our opponent's next turn, we end the turn. Mill ourselves. We have access to an arrow. Then we are getting pretty close to being Nexus of Tourney here. We get to revive Uro. Gain a bit of life. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's remove the Thassas. Though we will eventually need one of the Thassas Oracle. Alright, let's Uro. Mill ourselves. Draw a card. Oh, nice. A Discontinuity. Well, since we're going to untap at the end of the turn, might as well play another Lotus Field. Sacrifice 2 lands. Make sure we have a breakpoint at the end of our turn. We will take 3 blue. Oh, actually, no. I'll just let it resolve. Put a stop before our opponent's next turn. End the turn. Mill ourselves. Now we have one more of those. Let's go to combat. Attack with Uro. Draw a card. Gain some life. Decline to put this into play. We're starting to get to the point where we'll really need a Tamiyo, but we haven't hit one yet. So we connect our hit with our opponent. We will Chemisters Insight, discarding our island, milling ourselves. Draw 2. Can play another Wilderness Reclamation. Move to the end step. Untap once. Chemisters Insight. Discarding Love Strike Beast. Milling ourselves. Drawing 2 cards. Casting another Chemisters Insight. Discarding land. Milling ourselves. Drawing another Uro. And then we pass our opponent's turn. We end the turn. We mill ourselves. And our opponent resigns! Although we were running out of stuff to do. But if we hit a Tamiyo, we could do the same thing. We'd get the Discontinuity, draw a card with Uro, and then we get our Thassa's Oracle and end the game. So we went full Nexus of turns with Discontinuity against red deck wins. That's the way to do it. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe by clicking the Yoshi icon at the right of your screen. It doesn't cost you any mana, and it greatly helps to support this channel and keep the awesome videos coming.